Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and our Get to Know program. I'm your host, DP Lyle, along with my partner in crime.
Kathleen Antrim, and we have got a fantastic interview for you today. You're not going to want to miss this. Please watch it to the end. We're going to have some really good, interesting things that obviously, always ends up at the end. So press that like button, and it really helps us get the message out and increase our algorithms with YouTube. And please subscribe if you find these interviews interesting. And today we have with us Cody Blocker, who's just an incredible human besides a writer. He is an active duty firefighter. He has spent many years in protective services as a bodyguard. And golly, Cody, how many books have you written and ghostwritten at this point? Like over 50?
Yeah, including ghostwriting. Yeah, over 50. Yeah, you kind of lose count at some point. So yeah, over at least 50. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm really interested. So you come from a very physical world with firefighting and protective services.
Yeah.
How did you get into writing, and when did you decide you wanted to be a writer?
Yeah, so actually the writing came first. I guess I was just that started in high school. I just got into I loved literature classes. I was one of those people that had very fortunate to have a great English teacher in high school. Her name was Jean Miller, Mrs. Miller. So she got me hooked up with literature anyway. And I started writing my first novel in high school, and it took me a while to finish it. I finished that in college, and then I went to college. I got my degree was in English literature. I just liked to read and write. But
Did you ever finish that novel?
yeah, oh yeah, I did.
Did you
Yeah.
get it published?
No, I want to. It needs to be, revised about 10 times, right? Like our first one, is never, and it was also in this is way back in the dark ages, where I didn't have a computer, so it's all in a notebook. I still have the notebook. I have everything, but
Oh,
I want to
wow.
go through and yeah, but I'll have to type it up and redo it and everything at some point. But
You still like
um,
the concept?
yeah, the story is there. Yeah, the story is there. But just needs lots of work before people see it. But so yeah, so that just kind of, so I've just always done that, right? So I get out of I graduated with an English literature degree, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, that is what drove me into other work because I wasn't able to make a living as off of an English literature degree right away. So that drove me into I worked for a church for a number of years doing kind of logistical and admin work and other things, and that yeah, drove me into the kind of these other areas. I had to make a living, and so yeah, I worked as a private detective for a long time. I got into the private sector and did executive protection services, and was able to work my way up, and I eventually worked overseas and did some things, and then came back and am now doing the firefighter thing. But the whole time of these last 2 decades, really, I was always just a closeted writer. I just always wrote, and so I wrote. I don't know. I probably wrote 9 or 10 novels, I suppose, just as like practice, really, just trying to owning this craft before.
Have you published those?
Uh, One of them almost, so short answer is no. They're just not good enough. They're not there. But I was learning the craft, right, of how
What
to,
it takes, yeah.
yeah, not only how to start one, but actually how to finish one, and so I don't know, about 6 years ago is when I sat down and I said, okay, it's going to be more than a hobby. I do want to publish some stuff. I want to do it right. So yeah, so about 5, 6 years ago is when I moved, I think, to the next level of getting stuff published and getting paid for my writing and that sort of thing.
Well, as it so happens, Outliers is really growing, and we're going to end up having a subsidiary publishing wing. So, of
Nice.
course, I'm going to say to you, get one polished up, make it the best you
You
can make
bet.
it, send it on over.
You bet. I absolutely will. Yeah,
Well,
I'm a
this is
typical. Yeah,
shameless self-promotion here.
Yeah,
right. No, yeah. I'm a classic. I'm just a very typical writer. So I've got all those that I wrote, but right now I've probably got another 6 or 7 that are almost publishable but not quite finished. They just need a couple more drafts, right? So
It's always more drafts. Yeah.
yeah, and then there's like another 10 that are in my head that I'm trying to think about at the same time. And then I have a document of about 20 more that I'll get to later. Typical writer.
Awesome. That's awesome. So
Well,
how'd you
what
get into
Kathy was talking about
ghostwriting?
is Suspense Publishing and Suspense Magazine are under the
Nice.
Outliers umbrella now. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
Suspense
Okay.
Publishing actually publishes several of my books, including that in my entire Kane Harper's thriller series. So,
Okay.
we've got a track record with the Johnny Shannon for a long time, and they're going to start publishing under our umbrella. And so Outliers
Oh.
is going to stumble into the publishing business, and we're really looking
Oh.
forward to it. It's going to be
Yeah.
Yeah.
fun.
Things are
Yeah.
going
Outstanding.
quick here. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Yeah. Yeah. Most of the stuff I ghost written, most of the stuff I've gotten paid for. Yeah. I kind of went into the thriller, thriller suspense,
Mhm.
thriller mystery, a little bit of fantasy and sci-fi as well, but mostly thriller.
Well, let's talk about ghostwriting. How did you
Yeah.
get into that?
Yeah.
What was,
Uh,
how did that come about?
yeah. So for me, so my first book was a nonfiction book that I wrote about my experiences and some of the lessons I've learned in the protective services industry and in working for a church and some firearms type of legislation that I was involved in. And so I wrote that nonfiction book just as a self-published project to just get my stuff out there. I worked as a consultant, and a lot of people were asking you questions. So I figure anytime you're doing something and you have people like they want to pay you for your information and they ask you the same questions, they want to know the same thing all the time,
Mhm.
you know put that in a book, and then that way you can really replicate yourself. Instead of having 100 phone calls, you can just say, hey, read my book. This will answer like 90% of your questions, and you kind of replicate yourself that way. So I did that, and I needed an editor. And so I just started searching for a like a freelance editor. I don't need a long-term relationship. I just need, I have some strengths in writing, I feel, but the editing side is not I can do it. Like we can all do it a little bit. Every author does it a little bit, right? But I'm not an editor. So I was smart enough to know I needed to outsource that. So I found someone online actually through the Upwork platform, which
Mhm.
is, Upwork is one of these platforms like it's a freelance marketplace like Fiverr, and
Sure.
Guru.com. There's a bunch of them. And I found this person through Upwork, and he was just really good. We had a really good experience with it. And I hired him through this Upwork platform, and then so we got that project done, and I published the book, whatever. And just being always involved in the writing stuff, I was like, oh yeah, I have this Upwork account. And another friend of mine said something about he got a ghostwriting contract through Upwork, and he was brand new to it. But he's like, have you ever checked out this Upwork platform? And I was like, oh, no. But then I was like, oh yeah, no, I have an account, right? So I got back into Upwork, and I realized I just did some more searching, and I just saw that there were tons of people that self-publish, and they hire ghostwriters to write their stuff. And this is not I'm not affiliated with Upwork at all. It's not a promotion for them. This just happened to be the one way that I was able to put my services out there as a freelance writer. Now, and it was very attractive to me because I could get paid for it, right? So
Right.
I didn't have to wait to publish my book and get royalties. Like that is something I'm still doing, and I want to do that. But at the time, I really had two goals. I saw the benefit of working as a freelance ghostwriter. Now, the negative is you don't get credit for the work, right? As a ghostwriter, I write the stuff, I turn it over to you, and once you pay me, I sign the rights over to you. That's the whole idea, right? So that's the negative. I don't get any credit, so to speak, but what I do get is paid right away. So,
Which is great.
so I
Yeah.
yeah, I figured I can make money right away. As fast as it takes me to write a book, I can get paid for it. And then the second, which was more important though, is I got to again continue to own my craft and to work with professional authors and their editors and their editorial team. And they would give me all this feedback. I said, give me all the feedback you want. So of course I would get all these, the corrections and
Yeah.
do this better, do that better. So I was learning how to be a better writer and a better story
And being
craftsman
paid to do it.
and getting paid to do it instead
Right.
of paying to like take a class. So those are the two reasons I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And that was about 3 years ago. And I really just went in hard in that. And yeah, have ghost written, I don't know, 40 or 45 books through that.
Oh my gosh. How many genres have you done?
Boy, maybe all of them, right? Started off in romance, actually, right? That's a very big genre, right? I
Yeah.
didn't want to. I don't like the genre. But that's like the easier, the bottom of the barrel. That's where you start off with, right?
Yeah.
It's easier. I'm not disparaging the genre. I'm just saying it's so large. It's so well read. It's
Right.
easier to break in. So I started with romance. Then I learned about the romance genre and how there's all these different levels of heat and all this. And so I only did clean romance, and I did that for a while. And then so I did romance
No
and what
erotica, I take it.
no, nothing like that. I couldn't do anything like that. I'm like think of it like a good Hallmark movie or something, and what I loved about that eventually was it forced me to get better at characterization, because the plots aren't entirely too difficult, but to write a good romance, man, you really got to have the characters really well done. So
Yeah.
I learned a ton from the romance genre about that. I respect the romance genre and these romance writers a lot more now because, man, it's like the whole book, the whole plot of a romance is the characters, right? So, so yeah, romance, a lot of thriller, a lot of mystery, a lot of cozy mystery, police procedural, and then any type of science fiction and fantasy in there. But most of it was that thriller, suspense, mystery, cozy mystery. A lot of
And then
cozy.
that's nonfiction or just all fiction?
That was all fiction. Yeah, it's all fiction.
How does
Wow.
the process work? Let's say you have someone who has a concept. How much of the story do they bring to you before you start writing? Is it a sketch, an idea, a few plot points, or is it a fully fleshed story? Say, hey, I like the story, but I can't write it.
Yeah.
Or is it anywhere in between? I mean, what?
Yeah, it is yes to all that and anything in between, right? So for myself, it kind of just depends on the contract, right? And it depends on how much I want to do. It kind of depends on, what else is going on in life, how much brain space do I have for this project, right? So it's very common, to again, new authors and new writers, people that are self-publishing for the first time, they just have like very general concepts. And I love working with them because I love the whole brainstorming and outlining process. I love that, right? So sometimes, now if that's more work, right? If I have to do character sketches and outlines and backstory and story bibles, that's a more expensive project, right? Because I'm going to charge for that.
Yeah.
And so it's fine. So sometimes, yeah, that happens. But then sometimes I have a writer that says, hey, I've got an 8,000 word chapter by chapter outline. This is exactly how it has to go. I just need you to fill in all the details and write it. And I like that as well. I don't like that as much as kind of helping create my own, right? But I like them both. So yeah, I've had everything from I've had one guy, he's like, hey, I'm starting this author brand. It just needs to be a mystery. I'm not joking. This is literally, it needs to be a mystery, and it needs to start off with the main character receives a mysterious letter, and
And
that's
that's
it.
it.
Yeah, and I was like,
Wow.
okay, and what else do you want? And he was like, I don't care. You just make it all up. I don't. That's all he wanted. So everything
That's
from
an
just
expensive project because it's really
yeah,
your project.
right. Yeah. So that's fun. I love going into all of that. Right. So I've had everything from that versus this other person who here's an 8,000 word chapter by chapter outline. This is book 15 in this 15 book series that I've already written. You know what I mean? Very well established, all that stuff. So I've everything in between. So yeah.
Wow.
So it
Wow.
just kind of depends. Yeah.
I mean, I find it all fascinating. Do you need to be emotionally attached to the project, or can you just pretty much get into the story?
Yeah. At first, when I started off, I said no, right? No, I'm just a worker, and this is my work. Just give me the task, and I'll do it. But after a couple years now, that is not as true as I want it to be. I will write a better story and be better if I'm more emotionally attached to it, which again draws me more to these contracts where I get to create the characters and the
Mhm.
world and all that a little bit more. So yeah, as authors, we always have that spectrum. We're more emotionally invested in some stories and some characters than others.
Sure.
And whatever I do, I have to be, there has to be some level of connection, right? And that's why I really focus on my favorite genres of like thriller, mystery, and fantasy. That's why I couldn't do romance anymore. I just, my heart wouldn't be in it, right?
It's just,
Which
yeah,
is
it's just not,
kind of
I
ironic.
mean, it's a great genre, but I mean, we all have our preferences, what we like and don't.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So for me, I start off with genre. Like if I search for jobs, if I look for authors or whatever, I'm looking for thriller, mystery, fantasy,
sure,
and
sure.
that helps me know I'm going to be more emotionally connected to those stories.
Have you ever seen one of those books take off and think, doggone it, that's actually my book. I hate that my name's not on it.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, there's two in particular that just they were established authors. I was really excited to work with them. I was excited to work in the stories. One of them was books I had read years ago and I loved. So I was just over the moon when I got this job to continue to write a book in that world. I loved it.
Are they
But
traditionally published, those two
yeah,
authors? They
yeah.
are.
Yeah, or one was. This one who I read before was. The other was he's an Amazon best-selling author, so he was self-published but very
Can I
successful.
guess? Can I try to guess?
Oh boy, if you I would probably not because I still
Yeah.
have like the
Between us
NDA.
and the
So,
rest of the world. It's only between us and the rest of the world.
right. It's only on the internet, right? So but you have to, so yes, in a sense, yeah, disappointed, but that disappointment is like, married with this idea of, man, I wrote that whole book. Like I
Mhm.
know I can't really prove it in an area like this, right? Like I but but
You're thankful.
I know my
Yeah.
wife knows, like who matters, they know. And to me that means a lot, and that gives me a lot of confidence, I guess, moving forward. But the other way to say it is, yes, as authors, let's just be real, we ultimately want the book on the shelf,
Yeah,
with our
right,
name
right.
on it, right?
Yeah.
And to see some of that done very well without your name on it, it's okay, I get it. But yeah, there's a little bit of disappointment there. But
In
Well,
that kind of
I'm
scenario,
curious.
go ahead.
You had talked about the guy that had 15 books and wanted you to write or number 15 in the series. Did you have to go back and read those other ones so that you could understand the character and their
yeah,
history and where they came from and all that?
yeah, some. In that particular case, I didn't read all 15, right? But I
Right.
read like the first three to really,
Yes.
get an idea. And him, I had not read before, right? So I read like the first three, and then I read like the first, like the two prior to the one that I
Right.
was writing to give a little connection.
Yeah.
And the rest of them, you can kind of just
Yeah.
skim and get an idea. 15 books, it's
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
it's not the same, but it is kind of the same, right? I can kind of get that idea. So, but
Exactly.
yeah, so you just, and
Cool.
that author would give me, in a like an hour interview or just some notes or some outlines, I can gain way more information about the world than reading all the books. But so,
Sure, sure.
but yeah,
And
you have to do enough to understand, to connect what you're doing, to
Right.
match the voice of the author, the tone of the book, and it has to match, right? Otherwise, it
right.
doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
That's got to be difficult, actually. So
yeah,
when you do that, are you writing the first draft and then they come in and polish it, or are you doing the whole darn thing?
again, a little bit of everything, but the majority, I would say over 90% of it is I write it. They don't change a whole lot. They might change a little bit, but not as much as you would think. Like I thought a lot more would be changed, but the majority of the time, over 90%, it's pretty much what I write.
Wow.
And yeah, and I think that speaks to the other way I set up the relationship is, and again, it always depends, right? They maybe they don't want to be involved in the process, but even if they don't want to be involved in the process, I will not move forward. I won't move on to the step of writing the manuscript unless you approve my outline, right? Like
Sure.
we have to do that work on the front end because I don't want to get 75,000 words into it and then learn that you want to change 50,000 words. Like that's
Right.
not conducive to my time. It's way too expensive for you, so I'm a huge outliner. And so I'm like, let's put a lot of work in the outline. You approve it. I understand any outline. We're going to tweak it a little bit, right? We're going to change some things, but we can't be adding characters and subtracting chapters and doing big things. So
Yeah.
as long as we do the front end work, usually it works out pretty good in the end.
I just want to throw a little side note in here. Tomorrow night with Outliers, the class that'll be on at 7 p.m. Eastern time, Doug is teaching the psychology of character motivation. So yeah. So
I'm there.
fantastic class. So tune
Yeah.
in, I'll be tuning in because
Yes.
you're never done learning with writing. And that's
Absolutely.
why I love it so much. Like
Yeah.
when I'm 90, I'm still going to be trying to get it right and doing it better.
Right.
So
Yes,
yeah,
me too.
it's a
I
constant
always
learning
say,
curve.
yeah, it's like golf, right? That's what, things like that. Like you can play it all your life. It doesn't matter how good you are. You can always learn something else and get a little bit better. So that's why
Yeah.
I like it as well. I want to write my next book. I want it to be better than the last one, right?
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always. So, I've been asking everybody this question, so I'm going to jump in. Doug knows what this question is. So when you were a kid growing up, do you think your childhood in some way impacted you such that you wanted to be a writer? Did you live as a child in books? Were you shy? I mean, what have you?
Yes, I would say I've thought about this. Definitely, yes, as in it impacted me in this way. I didn't live in books. I wasn't a huge bookworm growing up. Like I said, it wasn't really until high school when
Mhm.
I really got into it. I read a little bit as a kid. For me, the biggest ones were we got Choose Your Own Adventure, right? I was a sucker for those. I love the Choose Your Own Adventure books. And then there was also a series of books by Robert Peck that was the Soup and Me books. These are like middle grade types of, I don't know, they
Yeah.
were very, anyway, I did love those, but other than that, I wasn't a reader. But I grew up in a very rural area and went to a small school, and it was just my brother and I most of the time. So I didn't read a lot, but what we always just played, right? We were always building forts and being characters and playing with their GI Joes and our Transformers. So we were always using our imagination.
And
And that
making up stories and yeah.
yeah, and that always stuck with me. So I remember that being a very logical and normal transition of you just make up stuff in your head, and now I'm just going to put it. I'm like, wait a minute, now I'm an adult, and I do the same thing, and I get paid for it.
Right.
Same
I'm like, I
sandbox.
can't. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I didn't read much, but I always used my imagination. Yeah,
That is so cool. It's all anecdotal, of course, but it's
yeah,
becoming very apparent to me with all the writers that there's some aspect of storytelling that was part of their life as a child that they
yeah.
grew up to become a writer and to fall in love with the writing career.
Yeah. We grew up, it was very rural, so we couldn't just go down the street and play ball with 15 of our friends.
Yeah.
We lived too far away, so we had to kind of just create our own entertainment and our own imagination. And that just never left me. And as I got older, now instead of up here, I put it on the page, and here we are.
Very cool.
So yeah.
And then the other question I have is, tell us a little bit about your company. You are helping to bring along ghostwriters, and you are
Yeah.
also teaching with Outliers, which is fantastic.
Bet.
And
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about all that.
Yeah. So again, the stuff like that comes and I wasn't looking. There was one of the things I wasn't looking for. That wasn't a goal, other than particularly this last 12 to 14 months. Just you just get connected, and you kind of networking and here, and I just had so many people just stop and say, okay, I don't want you to write my book, but can you teach me how to write your book? Like, can you
Mhm.
teach me how to be a ghostwriter? I want to do what you do, that sort of thing. And so, again, when you have the same questions coming at you over and over and over again, you start to go, okay, well, maybe this is the world, this is God showing me, maybe I should start this and see how it goes. And so,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, started to do that. I've got a great group of ghostwriters and writers. Some of them are just authors. Not everyone's a ghostwriter, but the majority of this group is ghostwriters. And we
Let's get
just
them. involved with Outliers
Yeah,
too.
yeah, absolutely. I will. Yeah.
We can tag team them and bring them along fast. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll talk a little bit about I say it's half and half. Some of it is, story creation and whatnot, but the other half is more business sides of things,
Sure.
how to sell yourself to get a contract, how to knock that contract out of the park so you get another contract, more business types of things. So yeah, a little bit of both. And so that's one of the things I've started doing this last year. Really excited about it. I love it. It builds me up. I get excited when I just talk about it, like these questions,
Sure.
anytime you have like-minded people talking about something, it's fun. So
Well,
yeah.
Well,
tell us a little bit about becoming self-aware.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I didn't know you were going to put this. Awesome. Yeah. So becoming self-aware, this is my other nonfiction book that I released earlier this year, and it's very short, right? It's not a long book by any means, but it was something that was very near and dear to my heart. And my goal, well, the goal is always a goal. I was like, I really think this is, I understand the genre. I understand the Amazon market enough. I think I could get this to be a #1 Amazon bestseller in its category. I was like, I could see that was possible. And it ended up becoming an Amazon #1 bestseller in 4 categories. So
oh,
that was
wow.
great. I was like, thank you. So this is a journaling book that it's 3 weeks. It's 21 journaling prompts, that kind of take you through a journaling thing. A lot of this came from my time of just principles that I have learned through other mentors or bosses, people that have, again, these last 20 years of working in a couple different industries, whether it's working for a church or working in the fire service as a firefighter, or working as an executive protection as a private investigator, just principles that helped me through the challenges that we all face in life. And again, you just get questions coming that way. And I was like, hey, these are things that were helpful for me. I'm going to put them in a book, and I think other people can benefit from it, and we'll see what happens. And so
Mhm.
nonfiction is not my favorite thing to write, but every once in a while I get stuck on a nonfiction project and I just have to get it out
Yeah.
of my head and onto paper. And this was one of those. Like I just have to get it out there and then move on to other things. So yeah, I was very honored by the success of that book. So
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
you bet. Yeah, it was a lot
Becoming
of fun.
self-aware. I'll be picking that one up. Certainly we can all use more self-awareness.
Oh yeah, this was one of those ones. Like after again, I write the thing, right. I put it all together, and then then after it's all said and done, like a month later, I took a copy and I went through the 3-week process again just to see it from a reader's perspective, and I got a whole bunch more out of it. So
Very cool.
yeah, yeah.
That's really
Excellent,
cool.
excellent.
Well, it's certainly been fabulous to have you on, Cody. We're gonna have to have you
Absolutely.
back. Very excited about the class you'll be teaching. I think that we probably need to talk about having you teach more classes, and maybe doing some outkicks, which are bonus classes.
Sure.
And thank you so much for being with us. You're a fabulous interview. It's
Yeah.
really a good time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Until next
Hey,
time.
everybody, press that like button and subscribe. And we will be back soon with another fantastic interview. I'm Kathleen Antrim with Doug Lyle, and we're signing off.